Hello everyone, and thanks for joining today's webinar titled Dashboards Part 1, Preparing Data. This is the first in a two-part series we're hosting this month focused on creating dashboards in Smartsheet. We're going to spend most of our time today actually on the pre-work before you build your dashboard. So instead of diving right in, we're going to talk about what you need to think about and also do in your sheets and reports in order to create the data that's going to power your dashboard. Now, because Smartsheet dashboards are so customizable, you get to choose exactly the data that you would like to include in your dashboards when building them, ensuring you're getting the right information to the right people at the right time in order to get things done. Next week, we're going to take the data that we create today and then actually build the dashboard. So next week, we'll focus on really understanding the building blocks of a dashboard known as a widget, and review best practices for designing, creating, and collaborating on your dashboards. Before you start building your dashboard, there's a couple things that you're going to want to think about first. And that's because you don't want to take a lot of information, mash it into a dashboard, and have something that doesn't answer people's questions or drive your results. So if I'm working with a project team, I'm going to make a dashboard with more actionable information. So things that need to get done, things that need to get resolved, and more. If I'm reporting to leadership, I'm going to be at a higher level. So we're going to look at overall performance, KPIs, OKRs, and so on. Related to your audience, make sure you're defining your purpose or your goal. When someone comes to visit your dashboard, what do they need to take away? Is there actions you want them to take, like updating tasks or completing a form? Do they need to understand the state of things in order to drive their own work? Or are you creating a portal, which is a way to use a dashboard to share resources? So for example, internally here at Smartsheet, we have a portal for each of our departments to communicate to the rest of our company with all the quick things you need to know about what that team is doing, how to request things from them, and what their roadmap looks like. Today, we're going to focus on really creating the data, and then next week, we're going to look at some of these other elements to create the best dashboard for your needs. Before we dive into our demo, I have a few slides here to introduce some of the Smartsheet functionality and really the goals of what you're going to be doing when you're preparing your data for your dashboard. We're going to start at the sheet level. So as you're working in a sheet, typically, no matter what your role is or what type of company you're at, it's important to track what needs to be done, dates, assignments, maybe budget, and so on. In the right panel of your sheet, you're going to find a sheet summary, which is there to provide a really standardized and organized way for you to track important information about what's being managed in your sheet. We're going to take a look at sheet summary when we go into our demo. And something that's really important to keep in mind is sheet summary isn't just living in your sheet. It's going to set up information that you can surface in a dashboard, either through including the actual information or through powering reports as well as charts and graphs. If you need to consolidate information from multiple sheets into a single place, so for example, if you want to see all of the at-risk tasks across your various project sheets, you would create a Smartsheet report. What a report does is it allows you to bring together rows from multiple sheets into a single place and apply a filter. This is also a great way to create a view of just tasks assigned to yourself, work that needs to be done in the upcoming couple weeks, and so on. Really creating these actionable views and allowing you to work across multiple sheets from a single location. Now, reports are important because not only do they bring together the rows from your sheets, there's actually two types of reports. The first one I already mentioned, a row report, and the second one is called a sheet summary report. And as you may guess, it actually brings together the sheet summary information you create in those individual sheets and shows them in a single report together. So this is a really powerful way to understand overall high-level status of each of the individual sheets that you're working in. You can add reports directly into your dashboards to have that detailed information available for you, or you can use reports to actually power the charts and graphs in your dashboard. Another way to work across multiple sheets is to create a portfolio view, also known as a roll-up, a metric sheet, or a master sheet. It really goes by a lot of different names. The idea here is you're actually connecting a lot of data from your various sheets into one master, so you can then apply additional formulas and really understand how your work is being managed at a high level. We're going to go into our demo to look at these 3 methods of creating the data that's going to power your dashboard. But before we do that, let's take a moment to level set on some of the most common ways we're going to use formulas across these methods. This is by no means a deep dive into formulas, so if that's somewhere where you'd like more information, our Learning Center has some great content, as well as a webinar that we hosted a few months ago that goes into a lot more than just these very common formulas. To start at the top, anytime that you need to reference a cell in a formula in Smartsheet, you're going to use the name of the column as well as the row number that that cell is in. And you can see 2 different examples of that on my slide, depending on whether your column name has 1 word or is longer than that. Your formulas also reference a range of cells, and there's a variety of ways to do that as well. You can either be very specific, referencing an exact cell to another exact cell. You can reference an entire column, repeating the name of the column separated by a colon, or a method that's unique to Smartsheet is using the children function. And what children represents when you're writing a formula is telling Smartsheet you only want to include the rows that are indented below the cell that the formula is in. While Smartsheet supports a large majority of the commonly used formulas out there, when you're creating these metrics for your dashboards, you're going to stick with a few common ones. And today we're going to use count and sum as our primary formulas. Your count formula has the ability to either count the cells in a range or count the cells that meet a specific criteria or even multiple criteria. You'll see the structure for writing a formula when you have a criteria, have multiple criteria, or really just want to count how many cells are in a range. The sum formula has a similar structure to count. You'll see we can also add criteria. For example, if I need a budget, I can look at an entire column, or if I want to be more specific and calculate the budget just for a marketing department, you can start incorporating criteria there as well. And we'll be using both of these frequently in our webinar today. So now that we've covered the 3 methods of data creation we're going to look at, as well as some of these common formulas, let's head into Smartsheet and start our demo. For today's demo, I'm using a template set found in our Solution Center called New Product Development. And we'll look at some of these items you'll see in front of us over the course of this webinar and next week's webinar. What I want to focus on to start are the 4 sheets that we have at the very bottom here. For our product planning and development process, we're using a sheet that's powered by a form. In this sheet, we are requesting new product development as well as tracking dates, important budget information, assignments, and completion. So really high level information. I currently have 3 products that are in flight called Product Plan A, B, and C. Now think about this sheet as a master sheet, and we'll come back to that idea later. But what I want to focus on is really the details that are going to be living in a product sheet. In my product plan sheets, I've created a structure where I'm tracking some really common information. This is going to be applicable across project management, product management, really a lot of different use cases. But even if your sheet looks nothing like this, the concepts that we're going to cover, so adding a sheet summary and using formulas to understand some of these details that my team is working on, are going to apply no matter what your sheet looks like. Now, to better understand the work in my sheet, I need a place to save formulas, and I can do that by heading over to my right panel and selecting the Sheet Summary button. Because we're starting out with a Smartsheet template set, you'll see that I actually already have a lot of information in here. So Sheet Summary can be used to add a description or an introduction to what's going on in this sheet, track ownership with contact lists, status, and budgets, which you can see I've got a formula in each of these cells. I want to go through the steps to add a couple fields that are then going to help us power our dashboards. You'll see here that I'm tracking how many tasks are assigned to myself, as well as how many tasks are assigned to Henry. And we'll want to add one more field so we can calculate how many tasks are assigned to June. So I will go ahead and either click New Field, or if I want to select the location where my new field will go, I'll click the 3 dots and then add a new field, either above or below. So very similar to adding a row to your sheet. I'm going to go ahead and call this June's tasks. Here we can incorporate a count if formula to calculate how many tasks are assigned to June. So I'll start typing in my formula. As always, Smartsheet is going to give me my structure so I can remember that we'll lead with the range. So we want to look in my assigned to column, meaning I'm going to type in the name of the column 2 times, separated by a colon. And because the name of my column has more than a single word, I'll want to make sure to include brackets around it. You'll know you've written your range correctly because it's going to be assigned a color as soon as you're done typing a range that Smartsheet is finding in your sheet. So mine just lit up in blue. I'll then add a comma, and according to the structure, my next item is adding a criteria. So in quotations, I'm going to type in June's name, close my bracket, and hit enter. And now I have new data in my sheet summary. Now, this is one piece of data, but what I've done between my, June, and Henry's tasks is created information that's going to be helpful when I'm powering a chart in my dashboard. If there were additional people on my team, what I would recommend, instead of writing that formula from scratch every time, just go ahead and copy it and replace the name in your new fields. Next up, we can write a similar formula, this time to track status. So you'll see I already have status in progress, on hold, and complete, and I'll want to add one more field to count how many items are not started yet. So I'm going to call this status not started. And we're going to use another count if formula. This time we're going to look at our status column, and because it has just a single word, I don't need to include brackets when I'm referencing that range. Now I have the data to power another chart, so either a pie chart or a bar graph, but I now understand in my project plan the distribution of tasks across my various statuses. Lastly, I want to track how many items are at risk. So I'm going to add one more field. I'll title this at risk, and I'm going to power this by the flag column on the left side of my sheet. This is going to look a little bit different because we haven't yet looked at a column that's powered by a symbol. And with a symbol, if you have a drop-down symbol like red, yellow, green, or blue, you're just going to type out the name of the symbol. In our case, if you have a flag, a check mark, or a star, anything that just toggles on or off, we're going to use the number 1 to represent flagged. So I'll go ahead and type in the name of my column. And then the number 1 to say how many are actually flagged. If you want to know how many are not flagged, you can use the number 0 to represent that. So now that I've set up my sheet summary, instead of going through all of this work on every active product plan that I have, I can actually go ahead and simply save my sheet. Head up to the three-dot menu at the top of my sheet summary and copy this to other sheets. Here you'll see I've got a product plan B and C already created, and I'll want to select field names, values, and formulas. What this does is it doesn't just copy the fields, it actually takes all of my formulas, and in each respective sheet, it's going to summarize the work being managed in that sheet. You can copy this and save yourself a lot of time and really standardize the way that reporting is done across your team. What we've done so far is we've added this sheet summary to each of our product plans, allowing us to analyze what is being worked on at the sheet level. So this is where it's typically important to think about status, assignments, budget, and so on. We've also created this information so each of our sheets has the same sheet summary and set ourselves up for the next method of creating data, which is reports. Now, to review, reports actually come in two flavors. You can create a report that gives you an actionable view, bringing together rows from multiple sheets that meet a specific criteria. So an example of this is a report of any tasks assigned to myself. Another example of a report takes the sheet summaries that we just built and brings them into one location as well. So let's head back into our Smartsheet and we'll take a look at these. All three of my product plans look the same, meaning they have the same types of columns in them, and I just copied my sheet summary, so I know those are standardized as well. This sets me up to get started creating a report. Now, as part of my template set, I already have a few reports created. So here, for example, you'll see a report of any tasks across my three product plans that are flagged. And I can click on my report builder button to look at the criteria. I've included my three product plan sheets, and I've told Smartsheet my only criteria or filter here is show rows that are at risk. Let's go through the steps of creating a report with a different use case. So a really common one is let's create a report that only shows the rows that are assigned to the person looking at the report. So I'll click create up here at the top, or I can always click my plus button on the left side of my screen and select report from there. I'm going to call this my tasks. And I'm going to stick with row report because I want to see rows that are actually in my sheet. We're not looking at sheet summary yet. Here, I'll once again include the three product plans that we're working in. And I'll go ahead and use who as my filter. So because I want to filter by an assigned to column, I'm going to select who. Smartsheet will give me any contact list columns that are in these three sheets, and I'll filter by who tasks are assigned to. Now, there's a couple ways to do that. I can either come in here and select a name, meaning anyone who opens this report will only see tasks assigned to Henry, for example. Or a really powerful way to do this is to select the current user filter. This allows you to create one report, but no matter who's looking at this report, they're only going to see their own work. And this is powerful because it not only works in the report, it's going to work in our dashboard as well using that current user filter. So when I click run, you'll see only the tasks assigned to me across these various product plans are showing up. And to build out the rest of my report, I can add in any of the columns that are in these underlying sheets. So in my scenario, I'll use the at-risk column, end date and start date, and status. So this is a really actionable report because I can either share it with my team or embed it into my dashboard. And this allows people who are on my team to understand this is the work that I need to do, see it all in one place so they're not going sheet to sheet and they can work directly in here. So if I needed to make an update to a task, for example, I can do that directly in my report, click save, and that underlying sheet is updated. The report we've created here is a row report, and a sheet summary report is the same idea. So it allows us to bring together data. This time we're going to be bringing together data from sheet summary though, instead of from my actual sheet content. I'll start the same way we did last time, selecting create a new report, and I'm going to call this program status because I'm going to include this high-level sheet summary from each of my product plans. I'll add my 3 source sheets, and I'll choose the columns that I want to display. So you'll notice the display options are the fields that I have in my sheet summary. So it's a little bit different than what we were looking at with our previous report. Now here I'm going to include some of the information that I would like to use to power the charts and graphs, so that visualization in my dashboard. So the number of tasks assigned to each person, as well as the number of tasks per status. We've now used reports to bring together information across our product plan, which is great. We can understand how things are tracking in a single location. One thing we haven't done yet is created the ability to roll up information and really analyze it at a higher level. And what I mean here is with a report, we're creating a view, but I can't apply formulas. And I need a way to understand what's my total budget across all of my current projects? Or what is our spend so far across all of the products we're developing? And again, this is really applicable in any use case. So if you hear me interchangeably using some of these project and product words, it's because the way that we're approaching this is going to be applicable whether you're event planning or running IT projects. We'll head into Smartsheet now and start creating this portfolio level roll-up view. With the template set that I downloaded, you're going to notice that there's actually already a couple different sheets that do this for us. So we have the new product approval sheet that we started in, where we started tracking the products that we want to work on, but once we kicked off those products, we actually started cell linking information from each of those individual product plans. We are going to start creating a metric sheet from scratch just to go through these steps and kind of understand at the basic level the theory behind what we're doing here. But this sheet that's included in the template set you can download accomplishes this for us as well. Now, I already have a blank roll-up sheet created, and when I say roll-up sheet, it's just a Smartsheet that I've created to track the information that's important from every project. We're going to create this using cell linking. So I actually want to create a link so anytime that the product plan is updated, it'll update my roll-up sheet. To do that, we're going to open up our product plan A sheet. It's already rolling up certain data. So I have a sum children formula, one that we looked at in our slides, that's adding up my overall budget at every level. I also have a sum children formula that's doing the same thing in my actuals column. And to review, anytime you see the word children, for example, in this cell in row 2, I'm telling Smartsheet sum up all of the indented rows, so all of the white rows. This is important to understand because a lot of the template sets you download use this functionality, and it's going to power what we're creating with our roll-up view. To create our cell link, I'm going to select the information that is of interest to me and then right-click and copy. So just a basic copy. You can use your Control-C keyboard shortcut if needed as well. We'll then go back to our roll-up sheet, and I'm going to effectively paste a cell link into my sheet. So I'll select the same range where I want that information to go, right-click, and instead of using Control-V or selecting the paste option, I'm going to select Paste Special. Now, by creating these cell links, I'm creating a one-way flow of information. So anytime that top dark gray row is updated in my product plan sheet, it's going to update in here as well. And you can see that represented by the blue triangles in each of these cells. I can continue doing this with the other 3 products as well. So I'll select the same range, right-click and copy. And then we can head back to our roll-up sheet and paste our cell links. Now we've got product A and product B, and this is where we can start incorporating that idea of a roll-up. What I'm going to do is I'm going to add a new row at the top of my sheet, and I'm going to title this totals, and we're going to indent. So we're creating those children that I've mentioned. And we can start incorporating formulas to understand our total budget and our total spend across our entire portfolio. So I will come into my top row, but before I'll do that, I'll add some color so I can easily differentiate my levels. Here we can then use our sum formula telling Smartsheet we need to add up and use children to reference any of the indented rows. This means that I don't have to come back and update my formula anytime I add new products, because as long as I indent them, it's going to be included in the formula. I can also use the exact same formula in my actuals column, and now I can compare my budget and my actual spend. Lastly, we're going to go to our product plan C and cell link that in here as well. This is just going to illustrate this is going to work long term. So as we kick off more and more products, all I have to do is cell link the data in, and any of the formulas that I've created will automatically include it because we're using that children formula. Now we can see that as soon as I indent this new product we've added to our sheet, it's updating my formulas with my new budget and spend as well. Now we started this webinar talking about sheet summary. So if any of you are asking, what can we use sheet summary for these formulas? The answer is absolutely yes. So I can kick off a sheet summary in my roll-up sheet if I would prefer. So I can add a field for my budget, for my spend, and I can also think about across all of the work that's being managed, how much work is assigned to each project manager, or again, how many products are currently in progress and how many have we completed this year. This all starts to give you the information at a much higher level about the products that we're managing. We created this roll-up sheet to kind of start from scratch, understanding the idea of a master sheet, a metric sheet, or a roll-up sheet, whatever terminology you prefer. The Smartsheet template set that we started out with already has a sheet where we're tracking a lot of this information. So eventually you can get to a sheet like this where you're tracking a lot of different products. We can use our sheet summary to calculate these high-level metrics about how we're trending with all of the work that we're managing, or we can also use the metric sheet that was included in our template set where we're actually using cross-sheet formulas to understand at a high level how this work is being managed. To create a metric sheet, it's really the same idea as writing formulas in your sheet summary, but you're going to use cross-sheet formulas instead. So let's start here with how many of my products are approved. I'm going to use our COUNTIF formula that we're very familiar with already. And the one difference here is I want to count how many are approved in that product approval sheet. So I'm going to select reference another sheet. We're going to pull up the sheet in interest. And our range for our formula is going to be the approval column. I'll go ahead and click Insert Reference to add this to my formula. Then we're back to the very familiar formula structure that we already know. So I'm going to tell Smartsheet in the approval column how many times is a task approved and select Enter. So writing these cross-sheet formulas to create a metric sheet is very similar to writing a formula in your sheet or in your sheet summary. And this allows us to create metrics that can also power our dashboard. So let's take a moment and head back to our slides, review the different methods that we talked and looked at today, and then next week in our webinar, we're going to start incorporating some of this data to build our dashboard. To review, there's really 3 purposes when we're generating this data for our dashboards. You may need to prepare sheet overview data, so to understand the work being managed in a single sheet. You may need to work across sheets, so really have one place where you can make updates to multiple sheets or create these actionable views, or you might need to roll up to a portfolio view. So let's start at the top. When you need sheet data, so you want to understand how the product plan is working in our scenario, you're just going to use the sheet summary on the right side of the page. That's going to be enough information for you either in your sheet or as a source of data for your dashboards if you're just creating a product plan level dashboard. If you need to work across sheets, you're going to use reports to create a single view, really bringing together information and applying a criteria or a filter to create this view. If you need to roll up data, so really understand how the data works together, like program budget and program spend, that's where we're going to use cross-sheet formulas or cell linking to create our roll-up sheet. This gives us a higher level understanding, so you can create a dashboard that allows you to say, this is how many total products are in flight. This is how many we've completed this year, and this is how we're tracking for overall budget and overall spend. With all of the content that we've covered today, I know there's a lot that we just learned. I recommend heading over to our Solution Center where you can download the new product development template that we used at and really play around with these sheets and test out some of the skills that we learned. To review any of these concepts, we'll of course send you a copy of this webinar, but also head over to smartsheet.com/learning where you can find learning tracks, articles, videos, and more. Lastly, if you haven't yet, join us next week for the second part of this webinar where we'll take all of the work that we did today and use it to build a dashboard in Smartsheet. We have time for just a couple questions today, and as always, we've been answering your questions along the way, but if there's anything that hasn't been answered, we'll follow up with an email for you over the course of the next 24 hours. We've had a couple questions about collaboration, so sharing sheets, sharing reports, and sharing these metric sheets, so who can see what. Anytime that you're sharing a sheet, you're sharing the entire thing. So users can see all of the content in your sheet as well as the sheet summary you created. Reports are really powerful because they let you work and update multiple sheets from a single place. Anything that you see in a report is information you already have access to. So if you share a report with someone and you haven't shared the underlying sheet, they will neither see or be able to make updates until you share that sheet with them. This is where the metric sheet with the cell linked data is really powerful as well, because with your metric sheet, you're cell linking data in one direction, so anyone can see that data without needing access to the underlying information. I'll also mention here that, of course, any information that you add to your dashboard, you've chosen to share, so there's no requirements to share the underlying data powering your dashboard. In the template sets that we use today, there are additional formulas that we did not learn about over the course of this webinar. So you might see that some of the symbols and flags and statuses, for example, are powered by a formula. There's a couple questions about how that works, and to learn more about formulas, head on over to smartsheet.com/webinars. On the right side of that page, you'll see a link of the past webinars we've done, and there is one focused specifically on formulas. A few of you asked where you can download the sheets and reports that we were working on for our demo today. In the webinar that we're using right now, go ahead and select the download template button right above the Q&A section. For anyone that's watching this recording later on, head to the Solutions Center available by selecting the plus button in the left panel of your Smartsheet and search for New Product Development, which is a free template set available to you. We've come to the end of our time today, and thanks so much everyone for joining. I hope to see you back next week for part 2 of this webinar, where we'll use all of the work that we did today and actually start building our dashboards.